A good morning to all. Welcome to this week's edition of Heritage Matters on winnfm 98.9. Thanks to our sponsors for carrying this program, and also to winnfm, of course, for giving us the opportunity to talk to the public about things of heritage, things that matter to us as a people. One little thing I want to mention first is that for those of you who have missed the live broadcast by radio of WinFM, that WinFM is now available on the usual 98.9 on both sides of the island. So do tune in your radios as you travel in your car, and even as you sit at your desk and so on WinFM. But of course, remember that it can be accessed live online at winmedia.com. So tune in, and welcome to those who are tuned into the program, Heritage Matters. And don't forget, you can call in at 466-0989. That's 466-0989 or 662-0989. And for those wishing to call from overseas, you can call as a U.S. number 718-285-6984. Repeat, 718-285-6984. So do feel free to call in at any time during the program if you have any questions or comments to make, and share your thoughts on matters to discuss, or maybe even if you wish to broach any matters that we may not even touch on. And hopefully we'll have the answers. But today we have as our guest Mr. Greg Pereira, well known to everyone. He's a leading tour operator in St. Kitts, and he is very much engrossed in things heritage, things history, things cultural, and things generally that affect our wonderful state or federation of St. Christopher and Nevis.
Good morning.
Mr. Pereira, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Hanley. It's a real pleasure to be here once again with you, sir. Thank you.
Okay. And so today we're going to have some general discussions on things history, things cultural, things pertaining to our
yes,
Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the properties on St. Kitts, I'll call it property, which we don't hear a lot of in the daily conversation, are the petroglyphs at Stone Fort.
Yes.
And these were created by the Kalinago people.
Correct.
Who occupied St. Kitts long before, thousands of years before the Europeans ever came. So they were, as far as we know, the original inhabitants of these islands. And of course, as part of their culture, as part of their things that they did, they carved, I don't think they had paper, they didn't write, but they carved images.
Correct.
In stone.
Correct.
That's not an easy job.
No.
Okay? And so those literally left for thousands of generations to see. One of the most notable are the petroglyphs at Wingfield Estate.
Yes.
On a big rock that's carved there. Two images of two creature-like objects. But I don't know if Mr. Pereira knows about, I'll call you Greg, that's
sure,
fine.
Of course.
If Greg,
that's okay.
that's fine.
Yeah.
If Greg knows of any interpretation of those two images, and then we're going to go on to the ones at Stone Fort. But let's talk about the ones at Wingfield first, because they are mysterious images Do you know of any interpretation of these images?
Right. So first off, I want to say that from my humble research, and I'm self-taught, of course, in what I know, my passion really comes to the table as one who is a proud Kittian, and I've done a lot of research in our history and heritage along those lines. But the Indian petroglyphs on Stone Fort Ravine and as well on the Wingfield Road apparently predate the Kalinago. From what I humbly understand, we're not exactly sure who left them there, whether it was the pre-Kalinago people who could have been the Saboni or the Arawak. But for sure, for thousands of years, these islands were occupied by American Indians, as they're called, from South America, from what I understand, and maybe even from the Greater Antilles coming south. So definitely these islands were colonized by a pre-colonial people who were proud and free, and these people left the rock drawings really as either a symbol for protection from malevolent spirits. It could be a memorial to dead ancestors. It could be a record of some sort. We're not exactly sure what they signify. So your guess actually is as good as mine. Mm-hmm. But we should not forget that these petroglyphs, as they're called, were only ever put, and this is throughout the Caribbean, is a thread of commonality, if I can put it that way, from island to island in the Caribbean, where you see these petroglyphs put near where there's sources of fresh water. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like a signal post, that, hey, you can find water here. And that's why I believe one of the things I've heard is that there are protections from malevolent spirits, because from what I humbly understand, these proud and free people that predated the European and the African colonists of St. Kitts, or people of St. Kitts, for them, moving water carried a malevolent spirit that had to be appeased. And so it's felt that because they frequented these sources of fresh water for everyday use, the rock drawing on the wall was there to protect them. Now, that's one interpretation I've heard. Now, the two petroglyphs you mentioned earlier, Percy, on the road up to Wingfield on that big rock, if you look carefully, one seems to have a huge stomach, and the other one seems to be a rather thin stick figure. Mm-hmm. The one with the huge stomach, local folklore, from what I've interpreted and understand, says is the frog woman who represents the wet season.
Okay, it does have that kind of resemblance.
Right, and the other one, the stick figure one next to her, is dubbed the Batman, because, and he represents the dry season, thin, dry season Batman. And so like the seasons of the year, the wet and the dry, excuse me, these two petroglyphs go together, man and woman, wet and dry. That's one folkloric interpretation I've heard as to what those petroglyphs stand for. And I also want to make a quick point that these people who predated our civilization here knew how to make color from oxidized minerals and vegetable dyes. So it's very possible that those petroglyphs were a very colorful mural at one time as well. Now, as to how they were created, in talking to other people in the Caribbean who are involved in tourism and know of these petroglyphs, and as well doing a bit of reading myself, I understand that it's believed that the shaman, the head man who was into this all things spiritual, basically, in the community, the touchstone of the culture, was the one who made these petroglyphs. And he probably used a harder stone. Now, these were people who were well versed in making stone tools. They knew their geology, their harder rocks. And so they could use a harder rock basically to rub away continuously on the rock wall or on the stone to create these petroglyphs. Now, there's a set of petroglyphs that really, that not many people know about, that I find quite fascinating. It's not just one. There are probably a half a dozen or more on a single rock, which is of unique geological composition. And this big rock is just below West Farm. If you know where the Honorable Robinson lived at one time, well, did live because he passed, unfortunately, rest in peace. But below his house, Mr. Robinson's house, married to Miss Ross. So below their house, on the water's edge, literally within the crashing surf, is a huge boulder peppered in petroglyphs. And not many people know of it. It is a fascinating rock because it's ebony black. And at certain times of the day when the sun shines on it, it highlights these amazing, intricate petroglyphs on that one rock. Yeah.
What do the images look like?
Faces. This is the thing. They're mostly, if you look at these petroglyphs around the island, you're going to see them mostly looking like faces.
Yeah.
This is what it's believed as well. There could be a memorial to a dead ancestor, as another interpretation.
I think I know the area. It's near a cactus, a big
Just below a cliff.
cactus thing. Okay.
Yeah.
So we have these petroglyphs, and only that one, I think, is really, let's call it, celebrated and protected by a fenced area. The one you spoke of, I don't think is protected in any way. It's just there.
Correct. In fact, the one that's of most interest within Stone Fort Ravine or Bloody River Canyon should be protected. Right. In fact, I was so fortunate and lucky to have been asked by the government in 2000 to act as the spearhead for the indigenous people's activities during Carrie Festa. So I helped them organize their ceremonies, and the Right Honorable Dwight Astafan asked that an atonement ceremony be done at the time for these proud and free people who had been, who genocide had been happened upon actually right after European settlement. So we, at that time during Carrie Festa, from a dusk to dawn time frame, we did an atonement ceremony within the canyon walls. And it was a very moving experience, Percy.
Who conducted the ceremony?
It was done by a guy called Papa Bash, who was from Suriname. And at the time, we had these people's descendants coming here for Carrie Festa from Dominica, from Guyana, again from Suriname, from Belize, even from Trinidad. We had Amerindians here. So they all took part in this very moving ceremony. And the Honorable Dwight Astafan was also involved, very much so. And one of the most moving things I remember is at night, going into the canyon with flambe torches and having Papa Bash do a tobacco ceremony on a stone there. And, his incarnations, his singing, his prayers echoed within the walls of that place because it's so narrow. The acoustics, is extremely special. And as it would happen, within a couple of weeks after that atonement ceremony, a wild honey hive suddenly appeared above the rock, used as a sort of sacrificial altar, in which he burned incense and the like. But above this rock in the canyon appeared a wild honey hive. And in talking to the people who took part in it and who are of Amerindian descent, it was for them an indication that the atonement ceremony did in fact work. That the place today is now a happy place. No longer does it hold any sort of negative connotations or feelings because of that atonement ceremony.
Death and destruction.
Yeah, thanks to Dwight Astafan.
Okay, good. Now, I do recall that some years ago, I can't really remember when, you probably remember the date better than I do, there was a group of Kalinago from Dominica who were passing through. They came via their traditional transportation, which was canoe. I went to the port to see them come in and watch the canoe. It was an ornate canoe.
It was
handcrafted from one piece of
a tree
trunk.
Yeah,
and they were traveling. I think they were making it a sort of reenactment of the movement of their people from South America through the Caribbean. And so St. Kitts was, of course, one of the stops.
Yes.
So they came here, and it is my understanding that I didn't go to it. I don't remember why, but they, of course, were interested in visiting the same site that you spoke of in Stone Fort River. And they went there and they did a similar ceremony to what you described a while ago, which I think also was moving.
Yes.
Did you visit? Did you go to that ceremony?
Not the ceremony, but I was definitely there on the shore when they arrived in their canoe. They also visited Nevis as well.
Yes.
And they call themselves, I think they call the boat the Gligli.
I don't remember the name.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and as you can see in my hat here, I think the glee for them is the American kestrel, that falcon that we have
Yeah, 'cause
flying
that's
around.
the kind of sound it makes.
Yeah, glee. Right.
As a matter of fact, one of the names in some of the islands for that bird is kili kili,
Okay.
because that's the kind of sound. So gligli is very close to that.
That's what they
'Cause
call
that's
it.
the kind of sound it makes. So just for example, I was walking on the road a while ago, and there was one on a pole, and I heard the sound first.
Yeah, before you saw it.
Kili 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 kili.
Yeah.
And I said, American kestrel.
Yeah.
And then I looked up and I was able to get a visual of it.
Nice.
Very impressive bird.
Absolutely.
And you can see from the feather you have there,
Yeah.
the kind of
Uh-huh.
colors. You can hold it up so that they can see it.
Sure.
A little higher, yeah. You can see the feather right there, the gligli, or kili kili, or American kestrel.
Yeah.
One of our raptor birds, raptor meaning birds that feed on live prey. So the hawks and the kestrels and the ospreys and those, and the eagles are all part of that raptor group. So, but he's our smallest raptor.
He loves lizards.
Loves lizards and mice.
And mice, yeah.
They eat all of them. I actually have a picture. I took a picture. I caught one in the Southeast Peninsula that had just caught a mouse. Went up into a tree, and the picture shows it holding the mouse in its
Wonderful.
in its talons, about to die.
Yeah, that's great.
So, yeah. So these people, they came and apparently they did a ceremony, and they said when they went there before the ceremony that they could feel.
It's a powerful place.
Yes, they could feel the agony.
Oh.
And the as it were, the
Heartache,
cries
yeah.
of wounded people there. And so they performed their ceremony to try and give them some peace and appeasement.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, there's a wonderful mural on the wall when you're driving down out of Challengers to the nursery, the preschool area there by Stonefoot Ravine. There's a lovely mural on the wall that actually tells the story of what happened to these proud and free people. And it's very sad to know that, you know, they were set upon and massacred there. So, you know, I think more should be done really to try and recognize these people.
I hope I'm not incorrect, but I think that mural is being created. It's still in progress.
Yes.
It's being created by our local artist, Mr. Pierre Libert.
Wow, cool.
Right?
Yeah.
I think it's a splendid work of art.
Absolutely.
And it tries from the eastern end as you come along the road.
Yes.
Going towards the west, towards Stoneford River itself.
Correct. To tell the story.
It tells the story of the Europeans, you know, well, of course, the Caribs who were there first, or the Kalinago.
Yeah.
Then it tells of the coming of the Europeans and how they welcomed them. Then it tells of the, as it were, confrontations that they had, and then them trying to kill the cacique.
Yes. You see, from what I humbly understand happened is that these people had a different mindset to the Europeans. In other words, possession of items was a communal thing. It wasn't a personal thing. Right.
And land especially.
So when the Europeans first arrived, and of course, let's not forget that the Spaniards were here before the English and French. And, you know, they didn't have there weren't any sort of gold and silver type deposits here for them to be interested.
So they weren't interested in the little island?
No, but they were interested in the people.
Mineral deposits.
Not in the mineral, but they were interested in the people. So what did they do? They duped the Amerindians who were here, these peace-loving, friendly people, duped them into coming on board their ships and then sailed away with them. And from what I humbly understand, the Spanish did this along the Caribbean, Eastern Caribbean chain, using these people to die for pearls in the Maracaibo down in Venezuela. And so they were essentially enslaved. So what I'm trying to say is that when the English and French arrived here, there was already a history of these bad guys in the area, right, the Spanish. And so I think enemy of your, how does it go again? The enemy of your enemy is your friend or something like that. So anyway, they realized that with English and French, they might have a stronger way with keeping these Spaniards away. So my point is, they originally accepted as friends, the Europeans, the English and French were. When they arrived here, And so this friendship apparently deteriorated very rapidly because of this lack of understanding of possession, personal possession versus community possession, which led to fights between them and eventually to the genocide.
Yeah, okay. Well, we're going to take a break right now, a commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to continue discussion on the Kalinago and the coming of the Europeans.
Thank you.
WINN is 98.9. 98.9 is Win FM.
Rams the good food people, always there to serve you. Rams the good food people, locations right near you. Rams the good food people, in-store specials for you. Rams the good food people. Rams. When you need better service, Rams is always here. Better value, better prices. Rams is always here. You want your loyalty. Rams is always here. We are community. We are family. We are family. Rams for you and me. We are community. Rams for you and me.
If you need protection, you need one who you can trust to secure your investment. You need one who'll do you just. TDC Insurance, you're the one that you can trust. TDC Insurance, you're always safe with us. TDC Insurance is your go-to insurance company for all your insurance needs. We take pride in offering you the best solutions and ensuring our customers are fully satisfied. TDC Insurance, we take good care of you, guaranteeing you peace of mind. You're always safe with us.
Okay, we're back and welcome back to the program. As mentioned earlier, we have with us Mr. Greg Pereira,
Morning.
local self-made historian and person interested in all
Naturalist.
things
Yeah.
natural, historical, cultural, etc., etc. One of the things I want to mention, though, is that one of the sponsors of this program is the Brimstone Hill Fortress National Park Society. And so I want to give them their credentials as a sponsor. So Brimstone Hill Fortress, of course, is that amazing place situated on the southwestern part of the island, close to Sandy Point. Beautiful fortress on a hill that creates some of the most astounding views on the available on the island, along with lots of history and interesting things. One of the things we want to mention too, of course, is that we have a new restaurant there, which we encourage people to come and patronize.
It's very good. I went there. Really enjoyed it.
Great. Thanks for the compliment. So, others would be willing to try and patronize that. So we're back and we were talking about the Kalinago, the people who occupied St. Kitts and Nevis too before the Europeans came. And Mr. Pereira Greg was talking about the interaction between the so-called settlers and the local indigenous people.
Right. So they actually had been here, these proud and free people, for up to 2,000 years prior to the European settlement. So many.
I even seen the figure of 4,000 years.
There you go. So even longer, probably. And so not only was it a problem of getting along because these people who lived here had a different concept to ownership to what the Europeans came with. So their machetes was everybody's machete, not one person. Or their chicken was everybody's chicken. So they had a problem from the get-go to understand each other's way with it. And that caused conflict and apparently eventually led to the massacre. But it's also true to say that we, St. Kitts, was not the very first colony in the Eastern Caribbean. We were the very first successful colony in the Eastern Caribbean, because the English and French, especially the French, did try colonizing Grenada, St. Lucia, and other places. And they were, killed off by the Amerindians who were there. So when they came to St. Kitts, they had this sort of history of problems with the Aboriginal people. And unfortunately to say, some historians will say that the French had a genocidal policy. For them, the only good Indian was a dead Indian. And so even though they were greeted hospitably initially, the French, in their back of their minds, always felt, we can't trust these people, we got to get rid of them. And the sad thing about what happened is that the mural talks about it, going down the road into Stonefort from Challengers. The mural talks about this ceremony that was offered by the Europeans. They gave the Kalinago a chance to come and sit and drink with them, get drunk with them, basically. And of course, unfortunately, from what I humbly understand, these people are less. Alcohol affects them much more different to how it affects other people.
They're less resistant.
Yeah, so they became extremely intoxicated, and at night, in this intoxicated state, when they were back in their hammocks going to sleep, that's when this genocidal policy kicked in by the French, and they literally went from hut to hut and took their sword and speared these drunk Indians basically and killed them. Those that escaped this initial onslaught ran up into Bloody River Canyon to seek protection. Those that didn't paddle away, they ran up into the Bloody River Canyon. They said they were chased by the Europeans, and from on high, shot at in the canyon and killed. And that for days after this very unfortunate incident, the river flowed red with blood. This is why it's called Bloody River, from what I understand. And this is why we had to do, and we did do, an atonement ceremony to try and beg for forgiveness for these wrongs perpetrated against these people who are proud and free people of a completely different mindset to the Western European, civilization that happened upon them.
Well, what about the story that it was, in fact, a plan by the Indians in response to the fact that the visitors, the Europeans, were taking away their land and so on. And as you say, that was a communal thing. But they were taken away for agriculture, because that's what they came here to do.
Right.
Plant sugar and plant tobacco and those kind of things. And they were objecting to that takeover. And having welcomed these people with almost open arms, and seeing that they were literally taking away their many thousands of years right to this land, and they were also, there was attempts, I think, at trying to enslave them, but of course they wouldn't have any of it. And they weren't as because these are people who don't do a lot of hard work per se. They had a much more relaxed lifestyle. They fished, they planted as needed. They didn't do commercial planting, as you said. It was communal. So planted stuff. If you planted cassava and the neighbor did potatoes, let's say, and you needed potatoes, the barter system operated. Everybody supplied everybody with what they needed. And so the regular stories that they then decided among themselves to try to get rid of these invaders.
Right.
And they, in some instances, I've even heard that how they did it, I don't know, maybe by traveling by canoe, seem to have gotten the Dominican Kalinago involved. And they planned an attack on the invaders to see if they can get rid of them. But it backfired on them, because one of their members, a female reputedly, who had a little affair with one of the Englishmen, told him, look, our
Right.
people are going to attack yours, but don't tell them,
Yeah.
because just protect yourself because I don't want you to be harmed. But of course, he told them, and so they were prepared,
Right.
and therefore ambushed them in the week.
Well, in response to that, I never forget going to a lecture by Rex Nettleford many years ago for History and Heritage Month here on St. Kitts, and he said something that has stuck to my mind since then, and it is that it's an African proverb that says, true history is only told when the lion can tell the tale of the hunter. So this idea of this hapless, beautiful princess of the chief being the one that what's the word? That let the secret out, that her people are about to kill them, right? It could be a whitewash, you could say, by those who wrote history to excuse what they did. Okay,
But that doesn't excuse it.
we're saying we weren't that bad. We got word first that they were going to attack us. So instead of waiting for them to
So
attack
it was
us,
it
we attacked
it was
first.
defense.
Right, it was defense. So this is what I think is the reason for Babe being a part of the story. It's true to say that history books mention that Babe told the Europeans, English and the French, that her people were planning an attack at the next full moon, and that other tribes from the neighboring lands were coming to assist at the full moon to attack them. This is what the history books tell us. But again, it's written by the Europeans. And it's interesting to know that those who escaped the massacre in 1626, some of them fled to Dominica. And it's true to say that Thomas Warner actually had a son with with the chief Tegerman's daughter, Princess Barbie. He had a son with her, whose name was Indian Warner, or Black Warner, they called him. And he lived in Thomas Warner's household initially with his mother, the Princess Barbie. But what happened is that apparently Thomas Warner's wife eventually came out to St. Kitts with her sons for him. And when she saw this woman there with this outside child, she went berserk, and they forced the Princess Barbie and the child, Black Warner, Thomas Warner, Indian Warner, to flee the house. Where did they go? Dominica. And they ended up in Dominica. Now, because of Indian Warner's way with it, he became a leader of the Carib nation, the Kalinago people in Dominica. And from what I understand happened, there was friendship between Thomas Warner and his son, Indian Warner, to the point where the English decided to give Indian Warner in Dominica the governorship of Dominica. So they said, okay, the island is ours, and the person who's in charge of it for us is this guy, Indian Warner, in Dominica. Now, what continued to happen, this is the way to claim Dominica, which is what they did. So what happened, though, is that following the expulsion of the Amerindians from St. Kitts after this incident in 1626, the settlements here continued to be attacked and harassed by invading Kalinago that were coming from the most unexpected places, apparently kill men and kidnap the women and children, take them off with them back to Dominica and use them as bargaining chips. They were kidnapped. Now, this happened when Thomas Warner's son, Indian Warner, was in charge of Dominica. So it created quite a lot of animosity, And what happened is that one of Thomas Warner's European sons, I think his name was Edward Warner, went to Dominica to try and see if he could get these continuing attacks to stop. And he invited Indian Warner to a meeting at a place called Massac in Dominica. And again, just like they did with them here in 1626, they got them all drunk. And then Edward Warner was said to have killed his own brother, Indian Warner, at that point in time. And because he was given the governorship of Dominica, would you believe the murder was brought against Edward Warner? He had to go back to the UK to stand trial for murdering his own brother, who was a governor of the British on Dominica. That's why it's called Massac. And then what actually happened is that he was acquitted, Edward Warner, that it was done, I guess, justifiably to kill the man. all because, you know, from his home territory, attacks were continuing from there onto St. Kitts and Nevis and Antigua, you know, creating mayhem. So they felt Edward wanted to do the right thing to kill his own brother, who was governor under the British of Dominica. I don't know if that makes much sense, but it's in play on what happened after that incident in 1626. And it's true to say, too, by the way, that Princess Barbet was said to have lived to be over 100 years old. And a gentleman by the name of, I think it's Pierre Labat, actually met her in Dominica at 100+ years old. So it's quite an interesting story. It really hasn't been fully fleshed out or told, but St. Kitts featured prominently, definitely, in early European settlement and what followed after.
Where can one find the documentation of these events?
Right. There's a book that I love to read, and it's my Bible. It's written by a gentleman by the name of Mr. Dye, D-Y-D-E, and it's called Out of the Crowded Vagueness. It's the history of St. Kitts, Nevis, and Anguilla. I highly recommend, if you're interested in our history, that you read Out of the Crowded Vagueness by D-Y-D-E, Mr. Dye. He is an English, apparently naval officer who married a Monstrasian, fell in love with the Caribbean, and wrote this amazing history book. But it's so well written, it will hold you, I promise you. And it speaks all the way up to Honorable Bradshaw's time, in fact. It's history from pre-colonial to modern day, basically, of the three-island state that once was.
Yeah, so for those who are interested, that's a book we can recommend that you reference, Out of the Crowded Vagueness.
The Crowded Vagueness.
Out of the Crowded
The Crowded Vagueness,
Vagueness
yeah.
by
Vagueness.
Yes, by author Dye,
D-Y-D-E, yeah.
Okay. Yes, so, you know, history, as you said, is one of those things that the people who especially can write and record are the people who seem to shape the story
of history. Yeah.
Those who don't leave written records and so on, those eventually get lost in time. And so it's important. And I think, I think we do, social media is doing a good job of that nowadays without people even realizing it. In that we seem to record almost every moment of our lives and what's happening without even realizing it. But in times past, many of the peoples of the world carried the stories of their people in a verbal format.
Correct.
Okay. So, you know, there were these people who were, as you were, responsible for remembering. In some societies, they call them what again?
Storytellers, maybe?
But there's another name.
Oh, yes. In fact, the government used that word recently. Begins with a G. Guru?
It's something like
Guyu?
that. Yeah.
Guyu?
But, you know, that person was like the let's call it tribes. Spokesman and memory bank.
Memory bank, yes.
You know, so he was charged with memory. But guess what? Memory only goes by what is conveyed. So if, for example, he remembers, let's say, point A to Z, but during that time, we have another alphabet beginning because there's new things happening.
Right.
So you have point A1 to, let's say, A100. But then in trying to remember all of that, you tend to forget maybe points A to B from the original story.
Right.
And so as we go along adding new stuff, the old stuff tends to get dropped bit by bit from the brain memory. But of course, if those were recorded in some other way. Now, for example, the Egyptians and so on, they were one of the first people that seem to be recorded as making written records through their, what they call it again? Hieroglyphs.
Yeah.
Okay. And they literally told the story by letters and pictures of their existence. But a lot of that too had become buried. And it's only in recent times with archaeologists going deeper and deeper and looking and searching continuously, they're gradually unearthing more and more information that help to reveal more and more about the past of these people.
You know, when I hear you talk, it reminds me of Jerry Mopstick, who was passed, rest in peace, having his piece on radio, Under the Banyan Tree.
Yeah.
Because in our own civilization, heritage sense, older people will tell younger people, I think it's the word is proverbs or something like that.
Yeah, it is.
Like monkey know which limb to jump on. Be
Sayings
careful.
or proverbs.
Right, which in a few short, succulent words spells volumes, you know what I mean? If the kids really listen. So that in a way too is...
And were in themselves lessons to be learned.
Yeah, the one I like is foul bum only show when high wind a blow. You know, that's a good one. Or be careful what you say because leaves have ears and long grass carry news.
Yes. Yeah, quite a few interesting ones. So, you know, these things form part of our history and heritage.
Yes.
And I think there's a book that tries to record some of the sayings of St. Nevis. I don't remember the author. But, you know, right now, if there are any authors out there who are interested in doing maybe some research in that, finding out what the sayings of St. Nevis are and recording them for posterity so that they can be passed down.
Absolutely.
I'll invite them
it's
to
important.
that. But right now, we got to take a break. So we will come right back.
We're different. We're 98.9. 98.9. Win FM.
If you need protection, you need one who you can trust to secure your investment. You need one who'll do you just. TDC Insurance, you're the one that you can trust. TDC Insurance, you're always safe with us. TDC Insurance is your go-to insurance company for all your insurance needs. We take pride in offering you the best solutions and ensuring our customers are fully satisfied. TDC Insurance, we take good care of you, guaranteeing you peace of mind. You're always safe with us.
Yes, we're back. Don't forget, you can call in if you have any comments or questions. 466-0989, 662-0989, or from overseas, 718-285-6984. So do feel free to call in and make any comments, suggestions, ask any questions as you feel. When we took a break, we were talking about recording of history and that it's those who are able to record that gets the story told. We were here during the break talking about some of the local practices of passing the message on, especially secret messages. And Greg had mentioned okay, here we have a caller, so we'll take that call. Hello, caller.
Yes, hello. Good morning, Percy.
Good morning.
Great show. I'm learning a lot from it.
Thank you.
Very interesting. I would like to just comment slightly on a heritage or historical issue. the Fort Thomas Hotel is going to have major development soon, and I want to say, in principle, I support it 100%. We need development. That's an old building. It's derelict, and so it's good. And I'm glad to see that the new developers, or the current developers, will be, according to the government press release, having a Caribbean museum. So that's good. That's a big plus. It's going a lot further from where it is today. But and to be honest, to talk or to mention what Greg was saying just now about the Ama Indians and the old history, history, I think it started 2,000 years ago, not in 1624 or even 1834. It's many, many years. That was a burial site for the Caribbeans and the Ama Indians as a whole. And I remember when the Holiday Inn was being built, it created some discussion. But of course, there's a balance between development and historical and other issues. But my concern is with this development so far is that I just hope it's done properly. Because when I was a young fellow, I used to grow up and run around the Fort Thomas. And as we speak, they're clearing all the bush down by the fort itself. And on two separate occasions, the fort has actually been damaged. The first case, when you have a fort and you have the cannons, you must have a cut stone flooring. Because if not, the cannons would sink in the dirt or the grass. So you have a cut stone. So there's a cut stone floor coming out from the walls about 10, 15 feet in the fort, covered with about 4 to 8 inches of dirt. And when the backhoe and the bulldozer was going in clearing the bush, they dug up a section of that flooring. So that was concerning. And then there's some social media comments, and it seemed to be rectified and dealt with to some degree. I hope the developers will fix it down the road. But recently, a few days ago, another part of the fort has been damaged by the backhoe clearing bush. This is one of the supports to the main wall, about 6 feet of the supporting structure has been
a sort of
damaged
buttress.
and fallen down. This is a concern. I hope again that the developers will be responsible to fix it back. But part of my concern is that, when you have backhoes and you have heavy equipment around something, a national treasure, a national part of our national heritage, the fort itself, we should have some form of oversight. Somebody should be there, from whether it's National Trust or somebody who knows, to look it over. I mean, I did see in the press release that the government have mandated as part of the agreement they're going to have an archaeologist. That's wonderful. I very much support that. But I don't know if the archaeologist is going before, like now, or is it after to help set up the museum, or before construction to say yay or nay. So it's important that we take great care in doing development. In 1965, they had a building. It was where they stored the ammunition for it. What they call it? The artillery building. And it was there at the bottom of the swimming pool. Well, the swimming pool is no longer there, but it was down at the bottom of the swimming pool, a cut stone structure with a roof. And apparently...
Powder something.
Sorry?
I think it's called a powder
house or magazine.
Powder magazine, that's it,
right.
Powder magazine.
And apparently, we had a militia in World War One. So British government or whoever must have given the militia ammunition to store in there, World War One ammunition. And in 1965, when somebody checked the ammunition, they found it had degraded and it was leaking, and it could not be moved. It may blow up. So they had to bring in the Royal Engineers to blow up the building, which was okay because it's a safety issue and the only thing to be done. And I remember as a small boy in 1965 saying, boy, I hope they build back the building or a similar building. But it wasn't. Okay, fair enough. But the point I'm making there is that building is gone for good, forever. 50 years, 500 years, 1,000 years, that building gone. It's the same thing with the fort itself. If you leave the damage, slowly but surely it degrades, and that fort goes, it's gone for good. Tourism and history is big money and big business.
Absolutely.
Especially military tourism. Anything to do, most of our tourists are Americans, and they believe in their military. It's part of their culture. Any form of military history, they love it. We're fortunate that we are fortunate we have Brimstone Hill because that's a massive fort. But if we didn't have Brimstone Hill, Fort Thomas would have been a center of tourism. So my point is, I just hope that the developers do it properly. The first signs are a little troubling. I hope they fix the fort. It's also on a burial site. In fact, some people are saying the reason why no establishment, no business establishment has ever worked on Fort Thomas was because they disturbed the spirits.
I heard that too.
Right. So we don't know if that's true, but you know, it's important. I also saw in the press release that there was a environmental impact assessment done. I think that's mandatory or supposed to be mandatory for all developments. My understanding is they're never issued publicly, but you can go up by, I'm not sure it's planning or Department of Environment and read it. To me, whoever wrote that report, I don't know who it was, should have at least had some concerns over that structure, that Fort Thomas structure. And no backhoe, no heavy equipment should have ever gone nearby without somebody, the report should have stated, somebody overseeing it. In fact, I think Greg could attest to this too. On the far end, the western end of Fort Thomas was a breeding ground for birds, boobies and so on.
Rookery.
And now the bulldozers are gone and bulldoze all of the bushes. Now, like I said, there's a trade-off between development and environment and history. But I would like to think or hope that that was put into the report and then a decision could be made rather than it not being in report and it just bulldozed. These environmental impact assessments sometimes can be a little bit shaky, you know, because I remember very clearly 15, 20 years ago when a gentleman was doing an environmental impact assessment for over on the peninsula. And it was in the middle of a very bad drought. This would be around 2005 or sometime after that, 2010. And he came to see me because he wanted to know about birds over there. And when I was speaking to him, I was talking about the Cockershell Bay Pond, and he asked me, what pond are you talking about? I don't understand this pond. Where pond? Cockershell Pond was dry, totally dry, and had no water in it. And he thought that was just a bare pasture. He figured, well, maybe when it rains, it fill up a little bit, but it's normally dry. Nothing could be further to the truth. And the point I'm making, that gentleman writing an environmental impact assessment report really ain't what the paper is on.
Right, because he doesn't know the place in its entirety. He only knows it at the moment when he saw it.
Exactly.
Which can be just an anomaly, a very passive circumstance rather than what it normally is.
Yep. So my concern really is about preserving the Fort Thomas Fort, having concerns for the fact that that is a burial site. So maybe when they dig up the ground, if they're going to build more, they could get somebody to go and look, somebody from National Trust or something, because you might very well find some artifacts, you know, the carriage would, I don't know if they were burnt or they're buried, but, you know, they would have some artifacts with them. So I think it's important. So Fort Thomas location is a very historical site. Nothing wrong with development. They can work hand in hand, but they have to ensure, I would like to think, that the development is done properly.
And especially if they're going to be creating a museum, as they say, then to me, they have a natural museum there already. Exactly. You know, in the form of the fort and from the burial site, in the form of the rookery that was there, and those can all be incorporated into the story that the museum will tell.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I would just thought I would air my views because
Thank you.
You know, history and museums go together. So, and it's my concern. And the development can be a great thing, but it has to be done right. And I just hope the powers that be ensure that it's overseen properly.
Great, thanks for that input.
Yeah, thank you. I actually did get a message through to the minister, and she very kindly said that they were going to make sure that it was done right. So, from what I humbly understand, there is a renewed effort to make sure it's done right on behalf of the government.
And right, of course, in this case means correcting what was done wrong previously.
Oh, yeah, to repair what was done, and then, of course, to have an environmental impact study done properly and So yeah, I've got great hopes for it being a properly done project.
What about the National Trust in all of this? Is the National
Very
Trust
good question,
involved?
because to me, they should have been the ones asking these questions. You know what I mean? The director should have been on top of this, but apparently they're gone silent. I think since they did the repairs on the Treasury building, they're almost non-existent. I'm sad to say. I don't know what's happening really.
Well, I would trust, because they are the body that we
Yeah.
normally rely on to
Right,
look
exactly.
into matters like these as environmental and heritage protectors.
Correct.
So I do hope that the National Trust will get involved in trying to look into this matter
I do too.
and, as it were, hold the authorities to the standards that they should be held to. Because just wanton destruction of a site should not be allowed. Now, at Brimstone Hill, which is one of our famous historical sites, if there's going to be any kind of digging, any kind of, let's call it construction, for example, because of the location of Brimstone Hill and its height, it acts as a very convenient place to link telecommunications from the Bastille area to the very western area of St. Kitts. And so you have many of the carriers. ZIZ has an antenna up there. Flow, Cable and Wireless, uses that same antenna. You have Digicel and all the other carriers do find that Brimstone is the perfect location to put antennae of different types to help to propagate their signal, which gets lost when you turn the corner behind those mountains. But Brimstone juts out from the mountains and comes near the coastline, is able to intercept the signals from the eastern part and convey them westward. And when they, of course, to set up antennas and so on, they require to be some digging and some construction. Most people wouldn't even know that those are there, because one, we try to make sure they're either not very visible, and two, we make sure that the digging that they have to do is very, very supervised. Supervised from the point of view of this. One, if, for example, we know that they have to do a certain amount of digging in an area that has never been excavated by formal archaeology, we first do an archaeological dig there to see whether or not there are any structures that are below the surface that we don't know of. There are any burial sites, there are any artifacts that need to be retrieved and so on, and rather than just a backhoe coming and digging it up and tossing the dirt.
So
away.
Percy, if you don't mind me asking, if someone would be, say, walking around Brimstone Hill and come upon a buckle or a coin or something of historic significance, what should they do with that?
They should really pass it over to the Brimstone Hill Fortress National Park.
And so
Society.
do you have a place to put it?
Yes, we store, as a matter of fact, Brimstone Hill is a repository for a lot of artifacts. In fact, when they were doing archaeology at Wingfield and Stone Fort to try to tell the archaeological story of the Kalinago,
Right.
they had nowhere to put the artifacts. Brimstone Hill became the repository.
Perfect.
So we have thousands of artifacts from those digs that are located at Brimstone Hill.
Interesting.
Okay, so we keep those artifacts, and therefore, if anyone finds anything, people, another call, people are like treasure hunting, and they find something, they'll want to
Bring
keep
it to you?
but they want to keep it.
Oh.
But usually, it's best to pass it on to us so that we can then determine the best way to preserve it and to present it to the rest of the public. I
Right.
think we have a call.
Good morning. I'm calling regarding the earlier caller in reference to Fort Thomas. I must admit, well, first of all, I'm grateful for the great insight that he provided into its history and other events I was myself a minor when that demolition took place in the 1960s. It was big news, I remember, as a child. It seemed like a big story, people blowing up something. But with regards to the environmental impact assessment, pardon my cynicism and skepticism. We've had a history here on St. Kitts where these studies are performed, and as was pointed out, they are not publicized. One has to know about them and go seeking for them. And when one reads them, and I have read some in the past, one wonders why did they limit their inquiries, their investigations, their interviews with the people with whom they did it? Because, as Mr. Hanley pointed out, often these people perform these don't realize that what they're looking at is a very different thing from what took place in the past. Case in point, when they did the alleged environmental impact assessment with regards to the Great Salt Pond, and they said, well, there was going to be minimal effect on the bird life. Well, from what I understand, they performed a study over a period of 3 months. Well, in order to study bird life, you need to study a period of at least 12 months in order to get what happens over the period of time.
Yes, because there are different stages in bird life in the Caribbean in particular.
Exactly.
There's a resident species, and they go through different phases of breeding, non-breeding, and then there's migratory birds that come through to use the area for their winter feeding grounds.
And just to add to that, this is why people at the National Trust are so important, because they would hopefully come to the table with an expert eye to oversee these EIAs, these environmental impact assessments, so that that they're going in the right direction and have the right criteria or documentation to make it a viable document.
But the authorities never ask for the involvement of the public, which I think they should.
That is the point. That is the point. People reach out and say, well, what has the National Trust done about this? Well, the National Trust is bypassed and was not aware that something was being discussed. And we find, the National Trust finds out, just like everyone is, because it happens to be in the news. It is unfair to blame the National Trust. Furthermore, the history of these environmental impact assessments is that they are conducted, but the findings, the advice and recommendations are ignored because there's no requirement to follow the findings that are made. So for all practical purposes, someone ticks a box on a checklist and says, an EIS was done. But, so what did you do about what was recommended? What was done about advices? I could name projects that have been undertaken here on St. Kitts, but I choose not to, where EISs were performed, but then they were just put on the shelf. In one case, I know it was the developer themselves who paid for and conducted the EIS.
I was just going to ask that question: who conducts the EIAs? Because in many cases, it's the developer who gets it done on their behalf. And of course, if they get it done on their behalf, then obviously it's going to be biased towards them being able to do the project without hindrance.
Absolutely.
Rather than it be done by the state, for example, at the cost of the developer, to ensure that it be as transparent and as objective as possible, to ensure that the proposed development does not have a negative impact that would be of significance in terms of making the determination as to whether it goes forward or not.
And if I could just add, caller, that this is why it's so important that the National Trust sharpens the tip of the spear, that is involved actively in whatever happens on St. Kitts. Not wait for government to say, please come and have a look. I think we need a more proactive approach to our National Trust, because they are vital in making sure that things go according to a sustainable sort of build out and an educational footprint for our people.
But Greg, although I agree with that, there's a situation I find that sometimes the developments are not notified to the public until it has reached the point where the development has been agreed upon, and the ground is being cleared for that activity.
I see.
And therefore, when the public sees that, hey, what's happening here?
Right.
Then they say, oh, it's a development of XYZ, and a EIA was done, and everything is fine.
Right, right.
But at the same time, that those EIAs to me, as the caller says, is usually a fait accompli, in the sense that they are produced and it just becomes a tick box on a to-do list. So, in other words, you're supposed to submit plans for your development. You're supposed to present an EIA. You're supposed to present this. You're supposed to present that. And so, if you do an EIA, nobody looks in it and says, okay, let's see what this EIA says.
Right.
Okay? No, you produce an EIA, it's ticked off. Okay, continue. Next item.
Wow.
You see? And therefore, it has no significance in terms of what it affects the decision as to whether the project will continue or not.
It is a challenge, so I am very grateful for the person who called, and now that I'm aware of this, because I must admit, maybe because I travel a great deal, was unaware that there's a development plan for the Fort Thomas Hotel.
You see, that's what I'm talking about. You only know about it when it's all done.
Exactly. I will now get stuck in, as the saying goes, as to what I can do, because after a backhoe has dug a hole and destroyed the virginity, let's call it that.
Integrity.
Okay? Yes. Putting it back in the hole isn't the same thing. Because sometimes people may want to do, let's say, on skeletons, one want to do DNA samples on them. Where when other people have gone and handled these things and they have been
compromised,
interfered with, you don't get the genuine reports on these things. And unfortunately, in this country, we don't have a history of going to court and getting projects stopped and said, look, until the following is done, you cannot proceed. We simply have to take the words of the authorities that we will do something about it. And we don't have the resources to say, look, I'm going to go to court and get an injunction that you can't proceed any further. I'm sure those of us in this conversation are aware of stories outside of St. Kitts where projects have been placed on hold for years because they said, stop. You cannot proceed. You've just found evidence that this might have been a burial site. Now, who was being buried there? Why are all these bones here? Who was it? Why no one knows about it? Find out about it. And until you can do that, properly either preserve it, remove the artifacts, or in some cases,
stop the project altogether.
Or in other cases, encase that portion so that maybe instead of digging a foundation, you build stilts, let's call it that. So the building be built above it and the original space be kept intact. So I'm immensely grateful to that caller who called and highlighted the issue of the Fort Thomas Hotel, because to those who don't know, the area is not called Fortlands by chance. It's called Fortlands because it was the site of one of the forts, one of the 4 forts surrounding Bastille.
One of the main forts.
That was the fort on the western end of Bastille, And we need a lot more involvement, and I'm really grateful to the caller.
We are grateful for your call and your input also.
And if I could just add as well, it was a quarantine station, not just a fortress at one time. Yeah.
That's correct. There was also a quarantine station. That's an important aspect of our history to know these things. Thank you so very much for your ears.
Thank you for your call.
Thank you.
So Greg.
Hey. Yeah, no, all very good points. I think we need as a people to be more aware of who our parliamentary representatives are, the person who is in charge of my area, my constituency, and have more of an interaction with these individuals when it comes to issues like that, or history and heritage in particular. I think our government should do more to create that atmosphere, that conduit, so we could be talking with them more about our concerns and our needs. I like to think it's there because I know we have a constituent parliament office, but I'm just thinking as a way around, the not being able to find out about these developments. If there would more of a rapport basically between our parliamentary reps and ourselves in each constituency along those lines, to tell us what's happening basically, so we can have a rapport.
But do you get the impression that officials are really concerned about history and heritage matters?
I think they are. I think especially the current Minister of Tourism, she's very concerned. She actually was in the planning department prior to being in politics, so she knows. She has a heart for it, for sure.
Okay.
Marsha.
Well, that's good. But the thing is now, once you have that interest, of course, to see to it that things are done
I agree.
to make.
But she's a very busy lady, you know what I mean?
Well,
So.
we all are, and I
that's
agree
true.
with that. But we need to ensure that these things are brought to the fore and dealt with as need be. I believe that if for example at this stage maybe the project can be paused, but some people would say that is danger to the project, because if you pause it, the developers might lose interest and say, well, that's it, and they disappear. But maybe that site should be subject to an archaeological investigation.
Thing is, what I read about that development is that the government has only given them the right to, say, hold certificate of title to that spot when they've completed it. So apparently they have to do the build-out first before things can proceed from a legal standpoint for them to own it. So I guess the time is on the clock right now for them to do what they have to do with the monies they have, so they can prove to government, yes, this is what's viable for us, and hopefully viable for you, so they can get title to it. That's what I understand. I forget the exact wording, but the AG, this is a different shift to how it used to be, in regards to developments on St. Kitts, that they have to finish what they're doing before they can get title to move forward with a business entity.
Yeah, and as the callers before have mentioned, the developers, and especially their people on the ground who operate backhoes and those things, should be aware that they are working on a historical site.
Absolutely.
And therefore, a certain amount of care, and as mentioned
Definitely.
earlier, should be supervised.
Yeah.
A certain amount of care should be exercised in the use of the backhoe,
Right.
because what my understanding is, after the event of the partial destruction of one of the structures, when the backhoe person was consulted, they said something like, it was high bush, and they were simply moving the backhoe through high bush, not knowing that there was something in there.
Yeah.
And it was only when it was cleared and they recognized, well, they hit something and it was already broken.
And that's the second time around, eh?
Yes.
They already caused damage the first time.
But they didn't learn from the first.
They didn't learn from the first.
Yeah.
So I don't know what to say. But
So it looked as though there was no learning curve. In other words,
Correct.
there's no intention to learn,
That's
in
the
the
thing.
sense that...
As I said, it races against the clock
Yeah.
for them to do what they have to do so they can proceed with their business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do think that some form of oversight and supervision should
Absolutely.
be exercised on that site to ensure that any historical structures, artifacts, etc., are not destroyed.
And if anything is found, there's a repository. Any
Yeah.
cannonballs, anything
Loose
at all.
items, yeah.
Right.
They should probably be contributed
Categorized
to the
or-
national
yeah.
to the national trust,
Mhm.
so that they can record where they were found and what
Yeah.
they were,
Exactly.
and kept for later presentation. As a matter of fact, if I'm understanding it to be a museum, what kind of museum is it going to be?
Caribbean history, from what I understand. I'm not sure how broad a scope they're going to be pursuing this thing, but Caribbean history.
But then you see, you're doing a museum of Caribbean history on a historical site.
Correct.
Therefore, to me, it is important to preserve the structures there.
I agree.
That can be a part of that same exhibit,
Mhm.
a live and living exhibit of part of the history of the Caribbean and St. Kitts and Nevis.
Also, knowing that side as I do, because I live across the road from it, they actually tore down a lot of cut stone buildings that used to be there when they built the hotel and when they modernized the hotel as time went by. And a lot of these cut stones were just put willy-nilly everywhere on the site as borders for gardens and, showing up platforms, and also the pool, the Olympic-sized pool, has an amazing amount of cut stones all the way around it. Now, I've seen that they've just torn down that entire pool structure. So I'm wondering what's going to happen to these cut stones, because from what I understand from a friend of mine who's in quantity surveyor, it took anywhere from an hour and a half to 3 hours to carve a single cut stone, right? Because it's cubed, it's six-sided, and usually made of very hard andesite. And so to think that this valuable treasure from blood, sweat, and tears, you know what I mean, is just being discarded, bulldozed away, with no one sort of putting them together in one pile somewhere so it could be used again. That's heartbreaking.
Yes,
and that's going on there right now.
And I do hope, and maybe I will find myself there to visit.
Please.
And we can persons like yourself and the other caller who called in to visit this site periodically and report if no one else wants to do the job. Report on what is happening, not only to the authorities involved, but also to the general public.
I agree.
So that they can have an idea of what is taking place. Because sometimes you might find the general public might not find themselves in a position to go there and see and record what's happening, but at the same time they might be interested to know what's happening and to have some idea of what is happening and what is being done about it.
And plus, if I could just add to it, it's not just a man-made infrastructure that's of concern, but the fact that there was a rookery site for seabirds, that there were some very old casuarina trees, almond trees, ficus trees, and they've been completely destroyed. There must be just two casuarinas left, one mango tree. They even bulldozed down coconut trees. So they've completely wiped the slate clean, basically, around Fort Thomas. And something else I want to add while I think about it. Fort Thomas Hotel, when it was built, was a Holiday Inn. And I've been told it was the very first Holiday Inn built in the Eastern Caribbean. And if you look at that structure, it's built in a generic way to other Holiday Inns around the U.S. So it's, in and of itself, from a Holiday Inn perspective, historic landmark.
In terms of the trees, I'm concerned when I see a lot of projects going on. For example, there's one close to where I live that had, maybe about, it had a lot of fruit trees in it. Yeah,
I remember, yeah.
Okay. It had avocados, it had cashew cherries, it had about 6 mango trees, and each mango tree was of a different type of mango, including one that was a mango that I have not seen anywhere else.
Wow.
Okay?
Yeah.
A very unique species, delicious, but a little funny. When I say funny, in that, because I used to pick and eat them, and a lot of people passing by the public used to pick them because the place was unoccupied. And those mangoes, if you don't let it properly ripe, the skin is very irritating. If you get the size, like it has sap in the skin when it's not properly ripe. So if you try to eat it too early and you bite through the skin, it can blister the sides of your lips.
Like acid.
Yeah. But once you let it ripe properly, it's fine. Even the flesh had the same thing inside of it. But it was a delicious, delicious mango.
Gotcha.
Okay? But the developers simply pushed it down along with all the other fruit trees in there. And I can't help but thinking that I seem to recall there is a law that says that for you to remove
a fruit
tree in particular,
I know that law.
Right?
Yeah.
That you must get permission
right,
from the agriculture.
I wonder if it was ever done.
But that don't seem to be the case now. People just simply push down trees and so on.
Sad.
Willy-nilly without seeking any kind, or even investigating what type of trees they are pushing down.
You know, right? I got a call from a guy who lives in Mattingly, and he was incensed that old mango tree on public ground was being bulldozed down by a developer who didn't own the land, but he just decided to get rid of the public, the fruit tree. And only after the fact, did he call, Wolf upset. And I called my friend, Dr. Brown, who is in charge of forestry, and he got on to the guy, but apparently it was too late to do anything about it. But there is a law for sure.
Yes, that says you can't cut down a fruit tree without proper authorization from the agriculture. But I remember that since I was small.
Yeah, it's been around for a while.
That, if you're going to cut down a fruit tree, you must
Have
get
permission.
approval. I remember visiting Jamaica some time ago, and we were doing a tour, and the tour guide showed us some trees in a particular area of Jamaica that he says were hundreds of years old,
Right.
and that the people who were doing that development wanted to cut them down, but the authorities wouldn't let them.
Well, there's
And that they seem as though they are strict. They have strict adherence to that rule that you can't just cut down a fruit tree.
Yeah.
But to me, the first thing is for you to do that effectively. Maybe there needs to be maybe a cataloging of where these fruit trees are.
Documented.
So if you plant a fruit tree of any significance, you should document it that this fruit tree is there, so that the authorities know, so that if there is any construction, destruction in any particular area, they check
but
the register should their fruit tree. No, let's go and find out if that fruit tree is still intact.
But let's take it a step further. What about the old mahogany trees, like the one in Challengers that was destroyed? And then there's a lovely one as well in Molyneux, in the house there across next to Fritz Bakery. There's some very old trees around this island that need to be documented so we know of their existence. And some sort of protection should be done, not just fruit trees, but especially like mahogany trees and ficus, like banyan trees.
Yeah.
These need to be documented.
And there's some old tamarind trees, like the one
Tamarind
just
trees.
there are two outside of Sandy Point, heading west.
Right.
That are there for ages.
Yes.
The trunks are big, broad, and knurled. You
And
can see signs of age. I'm sure if somebody were to do a dating on those trees, it would probably date to hundreds of years old.
Now, I was told by a friend, I'm selling what I bought, as we say in the business, right? But a friend of mine told me that in days of old, when they had institutionalized slavery, when a slave died, he was given back to the community for burial. And if that person was of somebody of repute, somebody who was highly revered in the community, when they were buried, not only were they buried facing Africa, facing east, but also they were buried with a tamarind tree. There's somebody of repute. They
To
built
mark the
mark the spot, because they won't put in a cross in it, right? Maybe some stones, if that. But they sometimes planted a tamarind tree. And tamarind comes from Africa, if I'm not mistaken, right? So this is a way of identifying this individual who was highly revered on the estate. And so those old tamarind trees could very well have underneath them a hero, you could say, of our people and our culture.
That's an interesting concept. And it's something, again, because of the unwritten history and traditions of the people before, we might not be able to tell whether this is a fact, apart from getting some archaeologists in to do a job on those places.
Right.
You see? And I think when the caller came in, I was just about talking about what happens at Brimstone in terms of when there's some kind of digging to be done, how we control it to make sure that whatever is there is not destroyed. And if, for example, the other day we had a situation where a wall collapsed at Brimstone Hill, the wall of the Oil and Bastion, the round part, due to its age and due to what we call hydrological pressure from within and so on, the wall collapsed. But it was our intention that we should not just leave it like that, because it's a significant and one of the older parts of the fort.
Right.
And therefore, we thought it needs to be restored. So we embarked on a project to restore that wall. And before we did that, we called in a team of archaeologists.
Right.
Because to restore it, you would have to dig away the dirt from where the wall was to get construction space to build the wall back up.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
But we don't want to go and send in a backhoe to dig that.
Right.
So a backhoe never touched that. What we did was that it had to be hand dug. But before it was hand dug, we called in the archaeologists, who, archaeologists are meticulous people.
Yes.
They don't dig in big clumps. They ain't going to take a shovel and dig into the ground.
Everything's documented.
Right? What they do is they would take a little trowel and they scrape the dirt bit by bit, shallow
toothbrush.
and even, and brushes and that sort of thing. And then if they have to remove dirt in quantities because they realize, okay, there's no structure there, but we can remove the dirt. when they remove a certain portion of dirt, they don't just toss the dirt to the side. You have sifters. Okay?
See what's in it.
They take the dirt and they throw it in the sifter, and they sift out the dirt part of it to see if there's anything left in there.
Gotcha.
Of course, you'll get maybe stones and so on, but occasionally you get artifacts inside there
True.
that sometimes are valuable, not just in terms of monetary value. We don't even think of that. We think of its historical
Correct.
and cultural value.
Correct.
And so when you look at that, you realize, oh, this was a item of great
Yeah.
significance from this, and it helps to tell the story
Yes.
of,
Yes.
of the site.
Yes.
And so they preserve, they will record where that item was found,
Right.
and then they will try to place it in terms of its historical significance
Right.
to the spot where it was found,
Right.
and
Right.
so on.
Which reminds me, Percy, when they did the dig up in that area there with the wall collapse, if I remember correctly, they found pottery shards that had markings on it. Right, this is from the enslaved community in the area. Dr. Altman, I think, did that research, and so here we had a tangible.
No,
bit
for the oil and wall collapse, it was done
Yeah.
by Dr. Schroeder and his
Schroeder,
team
right.
from the University
But
of
what was
Texas.
fascinating for me is that I could hold in my hand a tangible bit of our enslaved people's history, where this person had etched his name or his initial into the pottery that he used every single day to live. And I mean, these tangible bits of evidence of our past are worth, more than money.
Yeah.
So it's a shame
It's
that people
something that
don't
was
have more
lost
value.
for
Yes.
hundreds of years.
And here's that man's
now
initial,
coming back to the fore.
Yeah, that you could actually hold in your hand.
Yeah,
That's a fantastic thing.
And so we always do that. We get the archaeologists to come in and dig,
Right.
and establish whether. And so once the archaeologists had, and we found out very interesting things about that building.
Right.
You look at the structure that's there in terms. It's only a foundation wall, as it were. But when you dug around the foundation wall, which is the area where they would have to dig to get, there were underground drainage systems,
Wow.
which obviously showed that the building that was there had water collection from the roof. But it wasn't just allowed to drop into the soil. It was channeled away through underground drains that then had outlets in the wall to make sure the water didn't collect and create hydrological pressure.
So when I first started doing tours, one of the places I went to was Mansion Gut. And I'll never forget when I started to go up into that area there were actually bits of clay pipe, let's say about a foot in length, where one end was flared and the other end was sort of tapered in so that it could slot one into the next.
Yes, yeah.
And so there was evidence of the sugar plantation having its own water source, a spring. In fact, at the top end there was, and this probably still is today, a cut stone catchment, with a white lime cement base on the inside so the water wouldn't percolate out. And so there was this catchment with these old pipes coming off on the mountain into the estate yard,
Yeah, so it's important that when historical sites are being the target of any kind of investigation or social say of any kind of development, that they be investigated archaeology
Absolutely.
properly before just letting you see. And the modern thing of backhoes and so on and
It's
excavators is very destructive
Very.
to anything that
Even
might
just
be
driving
there.
over it.
And the thing is, we tend to say, especially developers, we tend to say, oh, well, the backhoe done rip it up already, so.
Too late.
Whereas in other places, like I can cite you New York, and the European, a lot of places, but I cite New York because I know of instances where in New York, for example, they were digging the foundation to build a new what they call them, high-rise building, right, skyscraper. And for those that go down hundreds of feet, because those have to have some very
Solid
firm
foundation,
foundations. Not only that, but the apparently the geological evidence of the area of New York, Manhattan, is that it's Manhattan is literally an island in the middle of a river.
Right.
It's a silted thing, it's developed. And so the real bedrock is quite a way below.
Right.
And you don't want to build a high-rise building which is hundreds of thousands and maybe millions of pounds in weight on the ground that can sink. So you try to find the bedrock. And so they go down pretty deep. And when they were going down at one point, they struck something. But of course, the developers in those places are under strict rules, and they have the what you call the codes that says if you meet something like that, you got to stop, report it, let an investigation begin.
As they should.
And so they came in, and when they investigated, they found the structure of a ship
Wow.
buried hundreds of feet below the ground, because at that time that was the surface, right? And so they were able to excavate that and get all the information they can about that ship and whatnot and so on, and do all the investigations necessary. I don't remember whether the project was discontinued because of it, or whether they then allowed the project to continue, but keeping the structure intact. You can't destroy it, and then find, as somebody mentioned, finding alternate ways to put the footings to avoid destroying the structure, and then they continue. But at least the investigation was done. The history books will now record that is there, and what that means to the history of the area and whatnot and so on. You see, so we need to adopt a similar thing here. I think that people might tend to say, "Oh, those things cost a lot of money to do and so on," but there's importance.
Let me give you a little story. So I'm honored to be a part of Man in the Biosphere, which is a UNESCO-sponsored project which government has agreed to, where we have a sustainable build-out with a certain part of St. Kitts from the offshore area all the way up to the top of the mountain. And this is the St. Mary's Biosphere. There's a folkloric tale in that area of I think it's a one-eyed shark that protects a hoard of treasure off the beach at below Keys there, right? So, there's shipwrecks around our coast. And lo and behold, there's this tale told of a shark protecting a treasure off that beach. So who knows? There might be, treasure off our coast, because from what I humbly understand, when the Spanish shipped out their treasures from Venezuela, from the Maracaibo area, they came to the Leeward Islands. That's where the term came from, Leeward and Windward, right? They exited to get back across the Atlantic through these islands. So there very well could be a treasure ship sunk off our coast. So these are all intriguing parts of our heritage, of our history that is yet to be discovered,
There are lots of shipwrecks around the coast of St. Kitts and Nevis.
Absolutely, I'm not surprised.
Remember there was that battle between the French and English,
All right, yeah.
of the Battle of Bastille,
Yes.
where some ships were sunk.
Yes.
They're still there. Not only that, but at various points, and even off Brimstone Hill, where during that battle, there could have been ships that might have been sunk by cannon fire.
In fact,
Because
you just
remember,
reminded me
those
something.
cannons have at least a mile of effective range.
Right.
And there's a ship that comes into St. Kitts' waters.
Oh,
I don't know what permission they have,
Probably none.
and so on. But they seem to anchor in certain spots
Right.
off
These wrecks are.
off Sandy Point
Right.
to maybe Old Road, right?
And they do night dives too.
And they operate at night.
At night, yeah.
And I don't know if I'm being too
Suspicious.
overly suspicious, but somehow it rings red bells to me.
Correct. I
Okay?
agree.
Alarms.
There's this
Okay?
talk of brass cannons being found and suddenly being
And I won't be
somewhere else.
surprised if those people have knowledge, because these days we have better equipment than they had before.
Yeah, for sure.
They can run a boat along the coastline nowadays,
Yeah, no joke. I pick up.
and without having to make a single dive,
Right. No way these
find
wrecks are.
wrecks,
Yeah.
because you have the LiDAR
Yes, correct.
survey equipment that gives you a literal 3D image of what's below.
Yeah.
And they can find shipwrecks below. And of
It's
course,
important.
without letting the authorities know,
Right.
that's why, because
Investigate
they're looking for
themselves.
treasure,
Yeah.
whatever you call that. And therefore, they go down and dive at night, so nobody will see the diving.
Correct.
And in the time, they relax, because maybe somebody may pass and say, "Hey,
It's
what
alarming.
What are
It's
they diving
alarming.
for out there?"
Yeah, it's alarming.
And so they could be finding
Sure.
artifacts and treasure that is worth millions.
Yes.
Look, you go to museums around the world, and these museums in these developed countries have artifacts from around the world at places that even the places don't know that
They have it.
that they were there,
Yeah.
because they literally stole them and took them away.
Yes.
For example, I was just reading recently that there was a meteorite. A meteorite is a space rock
Right.
that landed on the surface of the Earth. there was a meteorite that sold at auction for $5 million. But the site where the meteorite was found is in Africa,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
This was sold on either American or European
There's a lot of that out
market,
there.
right?
Yeah.
And that country, I don't remember which country it was now, is creating an investigation. How come that artifact was found in our country, is carried overseas and is selling for millions of dollars, and the authorities in our country don't know about that? There's no record of
Yeah,
it
it
ever
shouldn't be.
being. That's wrong.
Percy, one quick thing. There is an anchor at Fort Thomas Hotel, and there used to be a plaque that said it came from the HMS Child's Play that had been wrecked just below Fort Thomas Hotel.
You see, but we don't get interested in these things. And if we hear somebody find an old anchor,
Yeah.
feel like, oh, the anchor,
Or a cannon.
or a cannon.
Yeah.
Okay, but yet our forts don't have cannons in them because we've sold them off, or people have stolen them and gone to other places with them and doing wonders with them, and we don't get the benefit of
Yeah,
of
we need
that.
to build our own civilization. We have to really think about country above self, for sure.
Yeah, and know what's important, because
Yes.
there are things that we don't consider important that others do.
Correct.
For example, look at our sugar estates, for example.
Boy.
And we have to take a break now, so when we come back,
Okay.
we can talk about that.
Yeah,
So
they all had bells, by the
we'll
way.
be back
one
in
time.
in a short while. We will take a break and be right back.
Found the Sound 98.9. Win FM.
Ready to save while you build? Now you can at Builders Paradise. Yes, shoppers, build up your Value Club points at Builders Paradise. That's right, Value Club members and shoppers, your favorite frequent buyer club is now available at the home of hardware and more. Whether you're laying tiles, painting walls, replacing doors, upgrading windows, or fixing up your home, every purchase at Builders Paradise now earns you Value Club points. Enjoy exclusive benefits like discounts on thousands of items, special savings for seniors, instant deals, quarterly rebates, plus an extra up to 2% off every quarter. Shop more, save more, and more only at Builders Paradise. Don't miss out. Start building your rewards today with Value Club at Builders Paradise, because every bolt, board, and brush brings you closer to bigger, better savings. Terms and conditions apply.
Flow customers, unlock big prepaid rewards every time you activate a prepaid plan. Activate a 7-day plan or higher and earn points towards your rewards. Activate again, earn even more points. Activate next week, well, you get the picture. The more you activate, the more extra data and prizes you earn. Get in on the big prepaid rewards. Dial *129 or visit topupflow.com to activate a prepaid plan today.
Yes, welcome back to Heritage Matters, and feel free to call in if you wish and make any comment or ask any questions. The numbers are 466-0989 or 4662. Make any comment or ask any questions. The numbers are 466-0989 or 4662-0989, or from overseas 718-28. You can join in the discussion or make any contribution to it as you see fit. We have with us today Mr. Greg Pereira, and we are just talking things heritage and things cultural, etc., etc. And we were talking about shipwrecks before we
Yes,
took a break. And it's important to note, we talked about ships that I see, and other people have observed them, dock anchoring offshore at certain points consistently. Not a place where they can offload or do anything with cargo, and they keep coming back there all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, they have
They're dive ships.
they're dive ships.
They live aboard dive boats. That's
Okay,
what they are.
but then we don't hear or see what they're diving for. or what they have found. And they
Yes.
seem to do their diving at night.
Yes.
And so I would speculate, I hope incorrectly, that it might be something worth investigating.
Well, actually, from what I humbly understand, the fisheries department was supposed to station somebody on those boats whenever they're here. That was years ago. I mean, I'm talking decades back when this thing first started. Yeah.
Okay, we have a caller. Caller, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Hanley. Good morning, Greg. How are you?
Fine, thanks. Nice to hear your voice.
Mr. Aldrich had me, Mr. dozed off, you know.
Okay.
Okay.
I check the time, say still have time. Now, let me start by sending some birthday greetings. Today is my daughter Aisha Henry's birthday, and tomorrow will
Happy
be
birthday.
King Favor, Jason Payne. Tomorrow will be his birthday.
Okay.
Now, my parents worked at Buckley's estate. I tried to get it, I put in, must say 100 years, you know. Now, you know, but Cedar Range? You ever heard the name Cedar Range?
No.
No.
It leads from the railway up to Olives. On
Right.
the western side of the road, there is a housing project, Buckley's Development, on the eastern side.
Yeah.
There were a number of cedar trees there, you know.
Oh, that's
I
why it's
think
called
they were
Cedar
all-
Range.
eh?
That's why it's called Cedar Range.
Yes. And I always wonder what has happened to them, kind of sometimes people developing that are chopped down.
That's right.
So, from what I understand, in days of old, a lot of these so-called carriageways or roads were tree-lined. It was a thing to do,
Right.
to line
But
your
it was
roads with
cedar.
trees, yeah.
Sometimes coconut
There is-
trees,
you know, the- you know,
sometimes
Pitcairn
cedar
Palm
trees,
trees.
mahogany trees,
Yeah.
all sorts of different trees.
There's a big, is always a big cedar tree on Pitcairn Street near to where Vera the shop.
Picton.
Which one is Pitcairn Street again?
Picton is
Pitcairn Street.
near the old
Which one is that again?
Near the old
Oh, you know
ice.
where the Methodist Church is up on Hope up on the road?
Methodist,
Come to
yes.
that. Yes. A big one, you know. I don't know if it is still.
So all
No,
these
it-
trees should be documented, you know.
the
Somebody should
thing.
have a
That's what we
record.
talked
of it.
about
Because
before.
Yeah.
it's a very large one.
I think
Yeah.
some of these trees should be documented. So that
Definitely, and looked
Well,
after.
let me ask the next question. Our house used to have our nugs. You know what they call nugs, right?
Yeah, to prop them up.
Right. So rather than concrete pillars, they use wood.
A lot of times you use
And
tree
you-
fern trunks too.
Well, yes, because they were big. That's why I was wondering what kind of trees were they.
Well, tree
No,
fern.
they couldn't go in the
the
mountain
tree
and
fern,
cut any, you know.
the tree fern foundation were more for the chattel type house,
The small
the
ones.
small houses.
But the deal was apparently the tree fern trunk was ideal as a nog because it was termite proof, so it lasts forever.
and it didn't rot
That's right,
as
it didn't
easily
rot.
as regular
What you
wood.
said the name of the tree was?
Tree fern. You know, you go in the mountains, you have these umbrella-looking plants that have a top end.
It looks just like a fern, but that's how it grows into like a palm tree. It looks like
Yeah.
a palm tree, but it has
Correct.
fern
My
leaves.
father would go and cut the nugs them.
Yeah,
But they
that's
had to get permission from the estate. You couldn't go into the mountain and cut down trees.
And you know why? Because of one of the things we were talking about earlier. There was a law that anything above 1,000 feet above sea level, you could not cut down.
Yeah, and you were talking
And
about
that
the
law
fruit
came from a long time ago because when the planters came,
1904.
they were so interested in planting every acre that they can in sugar and tobacco and everything
Yeah.
that they were cutting down wantonly, and it had to be put to a stop
Correct.
because they were destroying the rainforest. So they said, hey, nothing above 1,000 feet.
Okay.
Everything below 1,000 feet, fair game.
Right.
But above that, leave it alone.
And if I'm not mistaken, I understand that we were the very first English colony in the Eastern Caribbean to enact forestry laws in 1904. Yeah.
Yes, because I know when you go to the mountain. What about Maho? You know Maho, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Are there still trees still around?
Yeah,
man.
there's some still. I see a few here and there. I think there's one on the Gulf Coast. Forget by Gulf
They're raw.
Coast.
They're like the wet, so the margins between the wet and the dry.
Yeah.
And their back, as you
Right.
probably know, is what people would go for to bind things
Because in
together.
Buckley's-
You know.
In Buckley's are Olives Mountain.
Yeah,
they love
one of
that,
one
yeah.
of
You know,
the one of
whenever
these.
they go to the mountain and they want something to tie.
Right.
Correct, that's
The,
what they use.
the maho is
Cut
what
off
they
and
use.
stuff
Yeah.
like that.
And the birds love their fruits too. The birds love them.
What the birds do?
Yeah.
Yeah, but my mind has always been on the cedar trees, you know.
Yeah.
What effort?
That's how you used to do. They would plant trees on the side of the roads at one time.
Yeah, and these were
For
tall,
shade.
old trees. You know? But you could check out the one on Pitcairn Street. You can't miss it.
Yeah, man, they should be documented.
Remember the man who used to play Santa Claus? Vera. That's it.
Yeah, man, they should be documented.
Remember the man who used to play Santa Claus? Vera.
Oh,
Okay, I'll
You
check
could
out
come
that
up
tree.
from the Bell Road.
yeah, we'll check that tree out
Trailings one.
and see if it's still there.
Pitcairn Street. Okay.
It's a very big tree.
Yeah, I know the cedar trees. They're big. They're big trees.
So
You have
when
different
when
kind of
it is
cedar
in-
too,
when
you
it
know.
is in bloom.
You have
it's
red
so
cedar and
beautiful.
white cedar. Huh? I don't know if you know that. What we call red cedar and white cedar.
Kind of pinkish.
Yeah, that's probably the white cedar.
Yeah, but and this thing about chopping down fruit trees, I think the law still exists, but nobody
Sure.
take it on because
No.
the government is just cut them down.
Because it is rampant. I mean, anytime they just want to clear land, regardless of what trees there, you push them all down.
Country above self,
Sometimes
people.
what they could do is plant them in another area, you know.
That is a possibility. If it's essential that it be moved because of the plan for construction. As a matter of fact, I noticed when they did things like over at what you call it now, Christoph Harbour. When they were doing developments like even the Marriott and the what they call the
Park Hyatt?
no, sorry, yes, the Park Hyatt, sorry, not Marriott, the Park Hyatt and what they call the development just when you're coming in, the pavilion,
Oh, uh-huh.
okay,
Planted
and that
trees.
area and you have all the residents and so
Yeah.
inside there.
Yeah.
What they did was they left in certain significant trees,
Correct.
all the gum trees
Yes.
and certain other significant
Yeah,
trees.
'cause
They
you
left them.
you don't see gum trees anymore.
They left them
True.
over there. And not only that, and tamarind trees and so on. But I noticed that where they were in a position that affected what they wanted to place there, they simply moved the
They
tree
did, I
to
remember.
another position.
Correct. Save the tree.
In other words, they saved the tree
Yeah.
and not destroyed, but put it in another position to be of a part of the whole decorative
Especially the
element.
gum trees.
Yes,
They did a lot with the gum
they
trees,
did a lot
yeah.
with that. I noticed that when they were doing it, they were moving
I have
trees
not
and just
seen
moving
a
them
lot
from
about
one
gum
spot to
trees
the
for
next to
ages.
accommodate what they were
You know,
doing.
all of those were in the village, in Hainesmith and from. Even in the cemetery. Sometimes the hurricane blow down these trees. And nobody will planting. They say the same thing in the square.
Yeah, so even like a mango tree. I mean, if you find there's a mango tree that is in a spot that is where you want a building, let's say, but you want to preserve the tree, find another spot and move the tree and put it there so that the tree itself is
because
preserved and not
if you
destroyed.
recall, when they built Fort Thomas Road, Fort Thomas Hotel, they brought in some of the trees, you know. Are you aware of it?
Yes, a lot of projects here, they brought in trees and in doing so brought in a lot of invasive species with
Yeah.
it.
Something go with it. But you know, maybe your society need to put more emphasis on it.
Have you ever heard of plum rose?
Yeah, you know,
I've
each
heard of
village
it,
could do
but
their own
not
reporting.
familiar with it.
Plum rose is
Because
something
you have
that
all
not,
of these
Sorry.
estates, with all of these aged trees, and no effort is made to save them no more than when they
Boy,
get blood down, they cut them up.
it broke my heart when they chopped down a mahogany tree in Challenges, boy.
Yes, I heard about it.
It was very sad.
Yeah, you could see that tree was
Some people
extremely
think,
old.
oh, well,
Very old.
oh, is that tree?
And
They
there's,
don't seem to get the importance of trees.
and there's different kinds of mahogany. Yeah? There's West Indian mahogany and there's Philippine mahogany. And so you can tell by looking at the length of the leaf. And that one in Challenges is West Indian mahogany. So that has, deep roots DNA-wise here in the Caribbean.
So what have they done with the wood?
That's the other thing too. That was chopped down, and up to today, I don't know what was done with the wood. That wood could have been turned into at least used in some way.
Inquire,
Yeah. Well, I don't know who to
because
talk to.
you couldn't make furniture if you don't want to.
Sure. Or even charcoal.
Not only that, but you see where that tree is. That tree is very close to the Bloody River site. And to me, the age of that tree tells me that tree could have probably been around during that time.
I wouldn't be surprised.
As an old tree already.
If only it could talk.
Yeah, it could tell stories.
Yeah.
And I was even speculating that maybe that the trunk, I think the trunk is still in place,
Still
right?
there, yeah.
That trunk could be a tool, well, when I say tool, the medium for a sculptural artist to create some sort of memorial out of the remaining trunk to make something that people can pass by and admire as a monument. Hello?
Under all the trees that gathered here. It was a meeting place in the night and the early morning.
Right.
There you go, part of our cultural landscape.
Yes, that's our ancestors there.
Should never forget that.
And earlier, myself and Greg were talking about banyan trees. They were on all the estates.
Every estate had a banyan tree.
And we had a program called On the Banyan Tree because it's well known that banyan trees. Right. Banyan trees.
There was a big tree in Buckley.
Yeah, they were the site where people communicated, told stories, conveyed messages secretly, and so on and so on.
So if I could just give a bit of a background, banyan trees grow horizontally, and that's because they have what are called aerial roots above the ground that become secondary trunks. And the reason why every plantation yard in St. Kitts had a banyan tree is because it was the perfect shade tree. So horses could be tethered, people could hang out under there for their pay packets to be told what had to be done that day. And as we said, at the end of a long day, they could gather there with their children and so on and talk about things.
But there was a Buckley's yard, right?
Yeah.
Village.
Every yard had one.
A big one was there. And I always ask, what happened to it?
Yeah. Now, under the banyan tree speaks to that history, to that heritage.
Yeah. But we need to appreciate what we have, eh?
Boy.
Because sometimes when you go to other countries and you see what they have, you say, my Lord. Like I used to go to Barbados more frequent to see my eye doctor. And I went down to the Barbados Museum. Have you been there?
Yes.
They say it used to be an old
Right, barracks. Yeah.
And I am there looking at all of these things and I say, God, we don't know what we have.
I think
We got a museum with little or nothing in it.
I think what I was telling Percy, one of the things I do on my tour, right? When I do these tours to visit our historic plantation sites and talk about the heritage of sugar on St. Kitts, is I said to the folks, St. Kitts featured prominently in Western development and Western expansion. Why? Because sugar is like, or was like oil is today and steel was in the 1800s. It was a very valuable commodity.
Well, do you know that when America and Britain were fighting,
yeah,
and they said, well, only goods in English ship.
Right.
The planters from St. Kitts were shipping them to Station Sabre.
That's right. Yeah, I know the story.
So we have to sustain the Americans. Sometimes, you see, because we don't know that. When you got to tell them.
I tell them, and I mean, okay, granted, we had the horrific institution of slavery, but at the same time, on the flip side of the coin, this was a springboard for Western development and expansion. The monies made here in those days fueled those economies. And in a way, I feel, that's a point that's often overlooked or forgotten, that people need to hear.
Because even when they said they end the slave trade, the British, they came to the same Station Sabre.
Yeah, the Dutch continued slavery after the British,
and,
yeah?
Yes.
Yeah.
And they breed them and sell us.
That's very true.
I don't know. We need to be a little more proud of our heritage. And
yeah, we helped develop the West. The money made here.
But our museum and all of that, they need to do something better. They give you the impression we don't have not much to show.
Well, let's hope Fort Thomas becomes what it's supposed to be, a history of the Caribbean, a place where we can walk around.
It should be our project, not anybody. Look me.
Aye.
It should be our project. It sounds good, but it is not our project.
Yeah, apparently it's been done by Sikhs.
By who?
Sikhs from India, from the Punjab.
I went to India, I went to India, went to Gujarat, Ahmedabad. Their interests are the history in our country. it's not long enough for them to do anything. You really want to have
I'm interested in knowing what's going to happen.
Caribbean, they say, Caribbean.
Yeah.
In fact, the government could have done it. People have been making suggestions as to what you could do with it.
But sister, don't forget how much money we put aside for Bradshaw's home, eh? And that's history
Don't
there.
even go there, see?
Yeah.
That's pure vexation of spirit. I mean, really.
Yeah.
And look how long the museum thing. They have not
That's
even
right.
put in a lift. It need a lift. Unless you're able, you can't go up there.
Yeah.
Okay,
You know,
caller.
and the one or
Thanks for
two
calling.
little things.
Caller, thank you. We have to
Bye-bye.
break now because we have the news coming up. So
All right,
we're
my
going to
pleasure.
wrap up.
Thank you.
Thank you for calling. And thanks to all the other
I woke
callers who
up
called
into
in. And
So
made
happy
the pro-
birthday again to my daughter Aisha. And
Yes.
Great.
And
Many more.
Josephine tomorrow, and all those who are celebrating.
Yes.
And condolence to all those who are grieving.
Okay.
Yes.
God bless you.
God
Thank you
bless
so
too.
much.
Keep coming.
Okay, good. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to wrap up now. And thanks to Mr. Greg Pereira for
My
being
pleasure.
here today. I think we had an interesting discussion. There were other things that we wanted to discuss that we didn't get to touch on. But we're going to be back again, and we're going
Yes.
to put those things on because we can't deal with everything, every program. So each program, we have to deal with something else. Let me quickly mention the fact that St. Kitts is right now participating in CariFesta in Barbados. We want to talk about that, but we didn't get the chance because time has run out. But maybe next time we can maybe have the folks from CariFesta
Absolutely.
who went to CariFesta from St. Kitts on the show, and we will talk to them about their experience there. So thank you for listening. Thank you for calling in and contributing. And see you again next time on Heritage Matters.
You found the